wasn't Phoebe asked me to say a few words about myself, and I don't like to do that. Of course, some people, my wife says I do, but anyway, yes, I grew up in Freeport. I went to Freeport School, Freeport High School. I went to Bowdoin College, and then got advanced degrees and so forth. All that usual stuff.
Did you go to Grostown School?
No, I never went to a single. I never went to a one-room schoolhouse. I went to Grove Street, and then the high school was upstairs, and the new grammar school was downstairs. And that was the name of the game in Freeport. Except for there was a grammar school, elementary, Park Grammar School in South Freeport. The building is now been torn down. And anyway, so I went off to teach college for a while, and got bored with that, and became an environmental consultant. As I was telling Mr. Foster here, I guess I got into the work of making sure that people got things done even when they weren't supposed to get them done. They perhaps didn't really should have not deserved to get them done. Well, that's not fair, but the idea was that if you were going to get some project done, you had to have environmental stuff, study and so forth. And so I did that for a lot of years too. And I have retired from all that. Now I paint pictures and write books.
What do you write books on?
Well, all kinds of things. I've written 2 books I've written about Freeport. One is called What Do You Do When the Train Goes By?
Oh, yes.
And that is kind of a story about some of the little stories that went about in my time of growing up in Freeport. Another one is called, what is the name of it? A Most Amazing Mix. A Most Remarkable Mix. And I think it has 10 or 12 short chapters in it about various people, L.L. Bean, Macmillan, things of that sort. So I did that. I did a couple of professional books, and I have, well, I say this anyway, I just had a book come out last November, which I'm quite proud of, and it's called Early Wings Over Maine. And it's a pictorial book, well, it's an illustrated book about the early years of airplanes from about 1911 to 1942. And that one sailed here, there, and everywhere. So enough of that. I got the note from Christina White at the Historical Society. They'd like to have you come down and talk for 30 minutes. She said 30 minutes.
She did?
Yes. So
that was ballpark.
That was, I figured that was a hint right there. So the stuff that I have done on history of schools in Freeport, is enormous. It's confusing. It's actually, in many instances, almost contradictory. You read something here, you see something, and it says, no, that's not so, it's something else. Because all of these things that were done in schools in Freeport were no different than any other town. And the school started when people in the neighborhood got together and said, we're going to have a school. And they made, well, I got a workshop we could use and so forth, and they would perhaps use that as a school at the beginning. Not to belabor that point, but anyway, they did do things of that sort. They finally got to the point where they actually had schoolhouses, and I thought it was a neat thing to really spend a few minutes talking about that there are still 9 one-room schoolhouses in Freeport. This is the Grover's Crossing School, which is right where you go down to the park area, the park street is across the road. This is the Beach Hill School. My sister taught in it back in 1940.
Where's that?
I'm sorry?
Where is it?
I'm sorry?
Where is it?
Where is it? Well, it's on Beach Hill Road. Yeah, so I'll try to tell you a little bit about each of these. It's on Beach Hill Road. So if you turn off of 136 and start up Beach Hill Road, maybe about a little less than a mile. And it'd be on the left as you were going up Beach Hill Road. This is what they was called the Pleasant View School. And it's located on Hunter Road. And it's not awfully far from Murch Road. If you know Murch Road, that cuts across between Hunter Road and the Holland Road. There was originally the school over on the junction of Merrill Road and the Desert Road. And that was torn down many years ago, and And they took some of the wood and hauled it over here onto Hunter Road and built that school. And so it was called the Pleasant View School. I don't know just what Pleasant View, but anyway, it was called. Okay. And this group may recognize this one up here, and probably don't need any instructions to find that. That's where you are right now. This is the school over on Wolf's Neck Road, just a little off from the junction between the Wolf's Neck Road and Burnett, is it? Burnett Road. And that is still owned by, what is it, basically called the Wolf's Neck Club. At one time, there seems to be some evidence it was across the road on the other side of the Wolf's Neck Road, but that's another story. This is the Porter's Landing School, which is, as far as I can tell, I've been told, it has not moved. It is in the same position. Did somebody say they went, Harold? Yeah. Is that about where it is? Okay, so it hasn't moved.
Can you see that from the road?
If you go down, if you're going from downtown Freeport to South Freeport, you go to Porter's Landing, go on Cove Road, the little road that goes off, and when you cut the corner of Cove Road and Lower Mass Landing Road, you are there. It's right on your left as you come to that. Then, in addition, this is the Collins School, or Collins Middle School, sometimes we call. It's the top one on this side. And that's an intersection with 136 and what they call Bragdon Road. I think it is still put. Not awfully far from the Durham line, I don't think. It's getting out toward the edge of Freeport, but it is on 136 at that intersection. This is an interesting school. This is the Burr School. Now, Burr School had a number of different locations. At one time, there was a school, apparently, as near as we could tell, there was a school on Beach Hill Road, but it was not the one you see over there in that picture, but was an earlier thing. And then there's some evidence that indicates it was simply the Burr School. Then they say, well, the Burr School was built and put down near the Burr Cemetery. You know where that's on 136 at the junction with Beach Hill Road. Anyway, it ended up being the Burr School, and we still don't know for sure. The final location as a school was it at the junction with, Durham Road, 136, and Beach Hill Road, or was it up on a little ways up on Beach Hill Road? We don't know. The story about it is, however, that the Davis brothers, H.E. Davis Shoe Company, one of them was my grandfather, and the others were, of course, great uncles. One of them was Ansel Davis, and he built the house that is now the nursing home at the corner of East Street and Main Street in Freeport. When he got big ideas, I guess, and it's also fairly deep pockets, I suppose, he decided that he was going to have a chauffeur. And if nobody else in Freeport had a chauffeur, so he was going to be the first one to have a chauffeur. And the chauffeur needed to have a home. And so he goes up and he buys the Burr School, which has now been abandoned, hauls it down and plants it on East Street. So if you turn on East Street where the nursing home is and go down just a little ways before you kind of dip down for the railroad track, and you're going down East Street, it's on your left. I grew up in a house across the street from it, but that has nothing to do with it. When I was a kid, Stan Johnson, who was chief of police or fire or something like that at one time, lived in it. He and Dorothy and their family. It has been expanded since then, but it's still the Burr School. Long way from where it had been. This is the Pleasant Hill School. And it's hard to say, if you're on Pleasant Hill Road and you're heading toward Brunswick, it's probably half, 3/4 of a mile, something like that, before you get to the Brunswick line on your right. Now, it doesn't look like much of a school because they put a second floor on it. But it is, renovated from the original school, which at one time, so we're told, was on the other side of the street. Now, what I've done, and I'm going to leave this with you. this is a list of all of the teachers, oh, what a list, from 1874 to 1920. Then I got too tired, I couldn't do it anymore. So, anyway, that'll be a permanent record for you folks.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very
And you can look in there and find somebody that you will remember or something of that sort. Now, what I'm also going to do, and I don't think that I would have done it for later too much with it, but I'm going to pass these out and you can keep them. I'll show you what they are. There's 5 sheets here, and they are portions of maps of Freeport. The maps themselves are too big, so you couldn't reproduce them easily. So I cut out the sections that were of interest and show the locations of schools. Now, there are 3 different maps here. One is 1857, one is 1871, and one is 1909. Now, the 57 and the 71 one have 2 sheets. There weren't as many schools in 1909, so it didn't take so much map. What they did, that wherever there was a schoolhouse in the map, you would see, it would usually say, sometimes schoolhouse, but usually it would be SCH or SH, and then that would be it, in just a little box. So you look at these things, and there it is. You can see it. There is an arrow. I have put a stick-on arrows on it for the point to the building. But each one was for each map, and I don't want to belabor it to have you spend much time on it because if you didn't bring your reading glasses, you may not have trouble. But it is informative because of a couple of things. It shows that there was an awful lot of disagreement about information from time to time. And I will say this as a straightforward thing that annoyed me enormously. In all of the Freeport records, right back from 1789 on up, never in a single school report, annual report, anything, or any sort of a publication did it ever say where a school was. Of course not. Everybody knows where it is. Well, I didn't, of course. And so I had to use these. But then you would find that somebody said, I don't know where that, maybe that's not just where it was, and it gets planted somewhere else. So you can't be sure. But I will go through them, but I don't know if you want to. But anyway, here they are.
Thank you.
And keep them and study them at leisure. In fact, there may be enough. I don't know if there's enough for everybody. But and to the extent that we belabor the issue, we have to show you a few things. But at various different times in Freeport's history, there were as many as 16 or 17 one-room schools. It's hard to believe it. I mean, these 9, of course, are all the ones that are left. But and this, incidentally, included a school that wasn't in Freeport. It was in Yarmouth. If you know Yarmouth at all, there's Granite Road that runs off of County Road and heads up across the railroad track. There was a school up there. It was called I can't remember the name of it. I can't remember the name. That's B now. But anyway, it was owned by the town of Yarmouth, and it was jointly provided by teachers by either Yarmouth or Freeport. Sweetser. It was called the Sweetser School. And it was over the line in Yarmouth. But the others were called in Freeport, of course. Just to give a few, there was a school at the junction of, I mentioned the junction of Merrill Road and the Desert Road, and we think, we are not sure, that at one time it was called the Swamp School. But we went through all sorts of stuff and information, checking this and that. I even went to the North Yarmouth files to see if they had anything. Nobody would say, no information anywhere, where was the Swamp School. I have a person that I'm working with, Vicki Lowe, who was in the library. and she won't give it up. She every time she sees me, she says, "Have you found the swamp school yet?" No.
Maybe it sank.
So I don't know, but I think it may have been a predecessor of this present view school that was built over on Hunter Road. There was what else is particularly interesting? Oh, down here at Flying Point, there used to be two schools. There was one called the Rogers School, which was over on Rogers' property, not very far, I guess, from the Brunswick line. Then the map showed another school, the Lower Flying Point School. And it's at the junction of Lower Flying Point Road and Burnett. And I said, what is it doing over there? Well, apparently there was a school there, but it preceded this one, as far as I can tell. And so, you know, at some point, that one was removed and then this took place. Yes?
Well, I live adjacent to that property, and we thought there was a pond, a small pond there, and adjacent to the pond was the well.
Yeah.
Very much overgrown in underbrush.
Mm.
And then the fire department some years ago enlarged the pond, so now it's
Yeah.
a fire pond. But, so when we were looking at the 1857 map, and it showed this school.
Yeah. There's another, you know, you can go on all night about this sort of thing, and I just don't want to get into it too much, but there was, well, we've had two different things recently that we've been trying to check out. There was called a Gore School, which was up on kind of at the junction of what used to be that part of it with Bragdon Road and the Wadtown Road. There's a little V of high roads coming together there, and the Gore School was located in it, middle of it. Well, we thought maybe we had found the Gore School. It had been moved, and yes, it was moved. It was moved down onto the section of, what would you call it, the section of Wadtown Road that has a dead end now because of the expressway, the highway that goes back. Well, it turns out that property is owned by Judge Denny. And he gave part of it to one of his children, some of his children. I'm not quite sure just what the connection is. But I went to Tim Connolly, who was Denny's son-in-law. And he said, well, it used to be here. And we said, come out here and you'd see it. Well, right next to his house is a beautiful patio. And he is all nice fixed up and so forth. And he said, when we started work on this, it was a pit. There was rocks and old rafters and oil-soaked stuff and so forth. We think this was the Gore School. So that was probably the end of it. Because he said that we were told that its last use was a chicken coop. But, but that was the end of the Gore School. Then there was also the Bailey School. Did anybody go to the Bailey Schools here? I knew there was somebody. In fact, they had a group that got together recently, I think. Yeah. But we just...
you got a deal, Bailey or Wardtown School.
Yeah. That was just simply because I wasn't...
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that the other part of it is that we don't know, and we haven't been able to get this confirmed. Up on Main Street in Freeport, there is a small street called Davis Avenue that goes off to the south and east. The Hersicket Inn is right flunked on one of the corners of Davis Avenue. Originally, on that corner was the home of another Davis brother. That was Henry E. Davis, who was president of the shoe company. And we think, but we're not sure, but at one time, and I cannot find any confirmation, written confirmation of it, there was the original H.E. Davis house, which did not sit on the corner, but sat down a little bit away from the corner. There was another little house further down the street, and then there was another house. Well, the Davis house got incorporated into the Hersicket Inn expansion. The next house, I talked with Cliff Gray, the Gray family that owns the Hersicket Inn, I guess. And he said that there used to be a small house there, or it had been a small house, and it had been expanded, and you know, it was an odd thing. It didn't really have a good logic to it, I guess. And when we tore it down, when we were expanding the inn, what was left of it, it said it had a basement that was full of rocks, and again, oil-soaked timber and so forth. Because to me, oil-soaked meant, the old days, that's what you did to the floors in these schools. You soaked them with oil twice a year. First in the fall, and then during spring Christmas vacation.
What kind of oil?
I'm sorry?
What kind of oil?
I don't know. It had it, you knew it, you could smell it, you know.
Like linseed oil.
It wasn't like lubricating oil or sheen oil. Anybody have a guess? I don't know.
Lindsay, what was the purpose? Why were they soaking the floors with oil?
Yeah, I guess
Was it preservation or?
but anyway, they were just implying that these timbers were soaked with it. Of course, you imagine if we did this twice a year, it went down through and so forth. We don't know. But I somehow got it into my head that Henry Davis, brother to Ansel, who's already moved this down for his chauffeur, said, he's not going to get away with this. Says, I'm going to have a chauffeur too. This is just speculation on my part. But he got a hold of the Bailey School, I think, and hauled it down there and planted it on Davis Avenue. And then somebody added to it, somebody added this to it, and so forth. Of course, it's all gone now. But I don't know. I have no substantiation for saying that it might have been the Bailey School. Yeah.
Were they moving all these things on logs with oxen?
Yeah, we could put them on or sleds and so forth. You remember that in those days, it was very easy to move houses because there were no wires over here. You know, if there was a tree, you could cut the branch off and so forth. But they could be on sleds. Think about how Freeport was a place where you hauled the logs down, you know, the timbers for mast and so forth. So moving houses was not a difficult thing in those days.
In the winter.
And these were one-room schoolhouses. You know, this was to be about the same thing as any of those, to be moved, take all of your connections and stuff forth, put it on a sled or put it on something, and that could be done. And when you think about this one coming all the way from up near Burr Cemetery, at least, down to East Street, but, you know, it was just a thing to do. It could be done. So, anyway, I think I may have talked enough. If you want to ask questions or comments and so forth, it's an awful lot of information there, and it becomes very confusing. Yes?
So, are Wolfbeck and Thomas Means the only two that have actually been preserved as that they're not private homes? The other ones are all private homes?
All of these, we'd be sure, yeah, they're all private residences. Yeah, yeah. And they've all been changed in some fashion, where these two, of course, remain pretty much the same as they were. The only one that I was ever in where there was a school was Beach Hill, because my sister, Louise Davis, was teaching there in 1940. And I remember we went there, they had a picnic show. I think there were only about 9 or 10 kids in the school. And it had no lights, so my father got a couple of Coleman lanterns. We took them up so they could have them in the school and have a show at night for the people in that part of town. That was a typical school where it had all the windows on one side, different from this. And I wonder if these were put in later, but we don't know. Because, you know, there used to be, you put all the windows on the left-hand side, they used to in the back, because everybody wrote with their right hand. And so that meant you weren't casting shadows if you were left-handed. If you were left-handed, then you got problems.
Not really.
I believe it enough.
The Porter's Landing School that you're talking about, she had all the windows on that side.
Yeah.
And also, don't forget that the two doors, the girls went in on this one, and the boys on the other side. Oh yeah, she had to do that.
And this was a coat room.
Oh yeah.
And some schools were really top-notch. They actually had an enclosed outhouse with an enclosed passageway. Some didn't.
When the students got inside, did they also sit on two sides of the room?
I don't think so.
No, we didn't.
What was the reason for two different doors? What did that do?
Tradition, I guess it was always. And, because you had two doors outside too, you know.
Right, but why come in?
Well, you have to strip.
We had
You
water
had the lady, you had the
on one
girls.
side.
Yeah, the girls toilet was on one side, and the
They
boys
went
was on the
alphabetically
other
on the
side.
seat.
I don't
And don't forget, you did one plus toilet.
Right.
You know, if the wind was blowing, you had to be careful, because you had to duck, because people were going to die. Oh, yeah.
I don't remember that we had the girls walked in one side of the door, the men on the, kids on the, boys on the other.
Yeah.
We all walked in together.
Was that right?
We had wood on
We
one
kept our
end,
coat on the other one.
we had water on the
The
other.
intention was
Was it
that
the
they
water
would
we had to do? We
be
had
separate.
Yeah.
80 years ago, this coming September, is when we started school.
We got a piece of flooring.
No?
This is a desk. This is one of the double, they were double desks.
So there were two pieces of wood.
So there were,
That was two
two seats, and there was a, well, a support.
It's
This is about, this is the only thing, it's all that's left.
And the seats were put on runners.
Or runners?
The seats, in all my memories,
But our
the seats
band
were always
was
set on.
closed.
Speedy. This got broken, this got broken in the last couple
We
of
did
years.
have to roll over.
No,
How?
You had,
I don't think Edna Mara never used them anyway, she never left the room.
Who?
Edna.
No, I know it.
And there was a little hole in the corner for an ink well. And of course,
Oh,
in the
yeah.
older days, it was a thing, if the girl sat in front of you and had pigtails, get that pigtail and dip it in the ink.
You really did, you did that?
I didn't do that. We didn't have ink.
Harold? Did you dip someone's pigtail in the ink?
If I get a chance, of course I would. I only went there to the third grade, yeah, because the windows on that side, blackboard, you know.
Now, my brother went to this
Yeah,
school.
yeah.
And,
Went to this school?
Mama taught here.
Your mother
They didn't
taught
go in the
me.
separate
Mama
doors.
taught him, my brother
They
went.
did?
Yeah.
To
Oh,
this
yeah, we
school?
went, yeah, the girls went on one side and the boys on the other.
These
No
two
fun.
doors here.
Yeah, fine, there was no fun about that.
Well, that only separated you for a period of how long?
A
30
minute.
seconds?
Oh, 30 seconds, yeah.
Did
What
that
was
work?
I think that today, I say they died.
Never earlier.
What? What did you say?
Oh, you
something?
girls are more wild over this.
Charlie Cruthers for crying out Pete. Good Lord, he was my grandfather.
I was amused at
1907. Hey,
My mother taught here.
where's that school you were talking about on the Hunter Road? What year you got that information?
about, you mean this building
You
here?
said a school up on the Hunter Road.
Uh,
What's the name of it? Pleasant West one?
I can't give it to you now, but I think it is roughly said that it was, you know, moved or constructed and built there, yeah.
Sylvia, tell them what you have there.
No, I got
I probably have
1884.
What is it?
Uh,
What is it, Sylvia?
Old town report.
Huh?
But it's a report of the
But-
schools.
Oh, wow.
Down here at, I didn't find that Pleasant View one we're talking about. This is in 1884. But, hold on. The Bailey School back then was taught by Miss Winnie Curtis. I gotta go down here. The Flying Point, which was taught by Margie Brewer. You notice they only taught one term?
They
In the
were always-
spring, in the fall, except for the end, this is my.
In this thing here, I think I've listed them by,
Yeah, you have
Terms, yeah.
spring.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that-
They didn't pay him anything either.
Oftentimes, a woman would teach the fall term and the spring term, and a man would be hired to teach the winter term. Not all.
Not all.
Why was that?
Well, I guess they thought it was
Where the fuck?
tough to get, you know, to wherever they, because a lot of the women, particularly, would be hired, and they would be boarded in a nearby home, unless they happened to live in the area.
Didn't your grandmother teach at this school, Sylvia? Cora?
This was in 1884.
She taught you. I don't remember then.
guess
She
mine
only
was-
had 2 years of high school and then came here to teach.
They
My
could do
point
that.
was taught in the spring.
Well,
But
Mama
they
went
could
to Girl
only,
Normal.
they could only do
By
it
Aunt
for
Maggie, in the
maybe
fall
2
by
years.
Sumner.
Right, yeah.
course, if they got married, they're all done teaching.
Is that true?
Oh, yeah, when they got married, they're all teaching.
Well, it's not like it is today.
What about the men? Could they get married?
I don't know.
I bet they
But I
I thought they
think,
could.
but I think, Don, remember when I called you up and asked you about next school? That must be it. See, Nick, I'll go with Crossing.
Yeah.
If
And
you
here's
did get
just
one of these,
next
take
to it,
one
okay.
because it's just fun, you know, in your spare time to dig through and so forth, but you can't really read it enough. Maybe the way to, yes.
I just have another question. So, was there any effort early on to preserve any of these other schools besides
Well, you
Thomas
mean
Means and?
I'm not sure what you mean. You mean that they got a second floor?
Oh, I'm sorry. I mean that they weren't sold as private to become private homes.
Well,
Were any of them like? Was there any historic? You know, what do you call it? Yeah, like a historic preservation movement to try to preserve them as schools, or I just, how did they become private
I'm not
homes?
really able to answer, but I can't think of anything, any school that got used for anything else, except there was one where you say they give a chicken coop, but that was much later.
But when they closed as schools, then they just got sold as private homes?
But every once in a while, in a town report, it would say a certain school was sold for $5, or maybe it was more than that if it was in good shape. And somebody bought it, and I think they did. There was a school up in Wardtown at one time that somebody made it into a machine shop, you know, a little private machine shop, but not much.
Yeah, it's there in there somewhere.
Did you ever look at see the school over on Buster's Island? Did you ever see the school over on Buster's Island?
Yes, there was. Yes, sir, I do. I forgot to mention that.
Did you see it? Because it's all doors.
How many kids?
Well, I've never seen it. Yes,
I have.
yeah.
I have. It's all buildings are just doors.
And they would have,
Came in on time.
they would have a summer session and sometimes a spring session because there was nobody over there. There's also an indication at some time that there was a school on Crab Island that I don't know if that, you know, because there was a family, there was a farm on Crab Island at one time. And maybe they just had a little school.
I have to go through, I can remember that when my father wrote different things down. Every house on the Snake Road and Fine Point Road and told about the island, I remember.
Another thing
John
is
just
if,
said that there were schools on Bustins and Crab Islands.
Crab.
Crab.
well, this,
There's only one house there, wasn't there?
yeah, well, that's what I wondered. But they maybe they had children or somebody got hired to teach them in the house or something. I don't know. There's the other thing in this listing here is interesting. You read along, and I can't remember, it comes to a certain point for the Litchfield School. Her first name is Edna. Don't tell me
Edna
what.
Byron.
Well, no, that's not what I want. This is her maiden
Yeah,
name.
there he is, I'm forgotten.
Brown.
Brown?
Her maiden name was Brown.
Brown. So the spring semester it says Edna Brown. The summer, the fall session and the winter session, Edna Byron.
Okay.
And this was the funny thing was because up till that time, if a woman got married, she didn't teach
That's
school
right.
anymore. You know,
We got
and
Pennsylvania.
she was so valued.
Yeah.
And as far as being, she had been in the Litchfield School for many years,
Yes,
but
she had.
they were not going to turn her out.
But she never went to
And so that broke the ice as far as teachers.
We
women
did learn
had
from
married.
She took some courses, I know.
Why was it that women wouldn't, once they got married, wouldn't teach? What was the reason?
They had to take care of their husband. That was a full-time job.
Yes, today.
I'm not going there. But
Years ago.
it was a valid question, and you know, it held water. My cousin Frank Small's wife, Geneva Griffin, taught in Boothbay, or Boothbay Harbor, I don't know which. She got married to a house, just like that. And that was the way it was. But Edna Byron was too valuable, I think. You know.
She was a good
So she stayed there.
Yeah, she was. everybody graduated, didn't
When did you have her? Did you
Oh,
go?
we had her, let's see,
we? We
1952
graduated in the 8th grade.
to 1940. We had her 8 years.
Yeah. Somebody told me we had all 8 years.
Better like your teacher.
And then we had to go out to high school and talk about being outcast. You were from one-room school, go to Freeport High School. Good Lord, they thought you were from Dungeon.
She never had a child in this.
Yeah, we didn't have any shoes on.
And she didn't give them, or did she go
No,
after?
she didn't have one
Yeah,
that
shoes,
failed
kids.
at graduation.
Ada
We always
was
had
like-
taken there to go to high
Ada
school.
I was
the
the
teacher
biggest
for
class
the
in
Rich
them
Field.
Yeah, but that was long after we.
How many were in your class?
Long later, yeah,
Later.
yeah.
Yeah,
My children.
Maybe the only class that had graduation.
Yes, we were.
Wow.
We started 80 years ago this coming September.
Wow.
Well, I think I've delayed the team or whatever. but-
Well, I guess we got into it.
I said to Phoebe on the phone one day, she's something about, we're gonna end this. I said, we're gonna be there all night.
Yeah, well, that's all right.
Sylvia's mother did, she hauled the kids to school too.
That's right, you did.
I still have the school bus sign.
Yeah.
Really?
With a horse and buggy to
Yeah.
build us.
Yeah, I used to go to Horse and Sleigh, Horse and
Yeah.
Wagon.
Oh.
We never had a snow day,
No.
like they do today.
No.
How is the schools for everything?
Oh, no, there's a frost on the ground, they call school.
Down by Julia's, if they think it's gonna storm tomorrow, they'll close it.
Sylvia,
Before tomorrow ever gets here.
what did you do during mud season?
That's right, they do.
So
Well, when I was about,
Stayed every door.
Somebody find
Sylvia, how far away from the school do you live?
I don't.
Well,
I don't know how many years
I was right
ago
where I
it
am
was,
now.
but it's
The
all.
school's right over
But
there.
we learned from getting around there.
oh, I imagine.
Yeah, why did your
we
mother
did.
do
We
that?
had
Why didn't you just?
a table for multiplication and everything, you could read it sideways. But today, it's still good, you know. The kids have to have everything put out for them and figured for them, and they can't do anything on their own.
Litchfield School probably was
Remember
the
the
last
electricity?
used one-room school in town.
Ada, what was her name, taught there, my
Ada Wilson? Yeah, she taught after Edna Brown.
Would still go in.
But my mother taught here, one of the schools. She taught in different schools in Freeport.
Yeah, now where did she live?
My brother went,
I know.
thank
it's
God
like,
I
oh,
didn't
they're
have.
gonna
Why
be there
couldn't
with
she
the
walk?
TV on and the computer.
We're just getting wound up now.
All at the same time.
I have a
So
question.
you have no information as to what happened to the Flying Point School?
The other one, no.
It's true. John was saying, we have the cellar hole in the.
Every once in a while, you would see something that would say a school was sold
Yeah,
for $5.
how they lit
And
the
Chris,
school when it was a
beyond
good
that, it
ginger
wasn't the
day.
business of the town anymore.
Phoebe has a question.
Oh, did we like this?
Phoebe.
No,
Right.
when it was
It's
started,
ready for you.
Okay.
like a
Oh, I
rainy
don't
day.
remember, do you, John? How did they like the school when it was
The
like,
kerosene
we
lamps?
didn't have electricity?
We didn't have any, we didn't like it for
I guess we had lights, Dot said, had lamps.
What kind of lamps? Lamp, oil, kerosene lamps?
We got this school for
I use kerosene lamps.
Like
Cloudy day,
I
you just
don't remember.
darker.
How did the horses go through the snow if there were like
Dot
3
thought
feet
they
of
were
snow
lamps.
and it was a
We
school?
didn't have any portable.
I don't remember. I remember the
Well, we
stove.
went by
It was always sunny. It was like-
It was always kind
I was like, oh, electricity.
There's a thing in the
Oh,
middle.
yeah.
What was that?
If you lived in Vermont, I had to come get
What
shots.
kind of light? Was that a kerosene light?
Was it kerosene?
But I can remember my,
Yeah, okay.
I don't remember.
Right in the middle is one light.
Right in the middle, she said.
Oh,
Lived there for a little
Oh,
while.
that's a good thing.
Does anybody know why they feel a little?
The kerosene light.
But anyway, it was too bad I
Kerosene
didn't
lamp.
walk. He was
We
really
just
just
found out, yeah.
Mama kept him warm on
Yeah,
that.
chimney sometime, wasn't it? This whole up here?
We wouldn't go up through there. And then finally they took him.
Oh, it's up to school.
Because of what?
With my cousin, with my coach.
Yeah.
It was too fast and I was anything over mine, they had to come in. So if they told mine, she
Here's
didn't
another
have to send the prune up.
The cheap.
These are the traditional schools, and they're located, and they would get open up, and they didn't really have, like,
We'd have them, we'd have Good experience.
Actually had to,
Yeah, you learn.
get into high school.
I was pretty young.
I was
Today, I
The
was.
first head of high school, it was down where the, yeah, the name is.
That
That was where the kids in there, they would X number.
And then they have travel.
You would do more than the kids did.
And in the town before, she'd done
Well,
in some schools, and like he was the woman teacher, teacher, kind of on control.
Spooky.
So they have to bring in the
Well,
guy.
but they think
They
there's
get
ghosts in
control.
there.
A lot of kids did.
Yeah.
Did you bring it down before? It's not the one that tells them about how the woman teaches law of control.
Yeah.
So the class, they have to bring the man in for a while.
Joan, you had a question?
We just had one last question. Were the schools at that time, were they run by the town and teachers were paid by the town?
They were
Now,
owned
wasn't
by
there
the
a
town.
time when
That's a whole story by itself, because in the very early days, they were not owned by the town. They were built by the neighbors, you know, in the neighborhood. You know, they got together and they built it. And, yeah. And it was only later that, in fact, the state made a regulation that put the schools under town ownership and direction. Before that, they weren't. Yeah.
So it wasn't yours. Oh, we're all having like.
Thank you also to our special guests who contributed memories and thoughts about those days.
you bet, Nick.
So glad you could come.
You were allowed to be tennis players.